Why is shame such a powerful emotion? How does it affect us mentally, physically, emotionally? I'm Nadia Davis. I'm a mom, author, attorney, and Kundalini yoga teacher who has experienced public shaming that brought me to my knees. On this podcast, I'm going to tell you how I'm living the work, taking shame out of the shadows. I'll give you real-life advice and skills to take away with you throughout your day. You'll hear from powerful guests who have overcome trauma and emerged stronger than ever. You too can ban the shame within and around you. Join me. You are not alone. Hello and welcome. Welcome to Home is Within You, a place where we work to identify and ban all shame as it shows up. And today we have a very special guest, Dr. Monica Krishnan. Now, before I get into her bio, consider these questions. What is the interplay between grief and shame? How do our beliefs about death affect both? What is the healing process from grief? How does shame impede it? Today, our guest is an amazing woman that's part of my Seventh Chakra Institute of Spiritual Sciences yoga family. And if I could spend a whole day just sitting, in a park or on a beach with her, it wouldn't be enough time. It wouldn't be enough time. A whole week wouldn't be. She just has a plethora, yes, of wisdom, but also energy and love and light. And through her work, she is helping people walk through grief. And she's just one of those people that I wish I could ask a multitude of questions to and just listen to all day. She is a clinical pharmacist with over 25 years of work experience. She is a huge mental health advocate, a grief advocate, who, in my humble opinion, courageously began to publicly speak about grief and loss in 2018. Following her own personal deep loss, she shared her journey and began sharing it more and more. And again, in my humble opinion, her work is banning shame, banning feelings of defectiveness related to loss, and for others in the grieving process who feel that it's something we need to hide. It's something that can only be done alone. But I think most of all that has to be hidden. We can choose that solitude to take that space, which we should, but we should never feel that we have to hide grief and quickly move on from a loss. It's a long process and can be a beautiful, enlightening one. I want to say she has also served as a medical writer for a medical healthcare platform. I believe the name is At Good RX. And she's currently getting ready, or she's like nearly launched. This is very cool. Her very first book. It's a children's book, and it is about mental health and grief. And through her pain, she was able to convert it into her dharma or her destiny, her work. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful story. She is also a mom, and her book is called Finding Pockets of Sunshine. I will include links not only to her and her work and her writings, but also to that book. They are in this podcast episode notes. So please check that all out, and we'll get into her journey of writing that and what it's about as much as she would like. So, first of all, how are you?
Nadia, thank you so much for the beautiful introduction. I love being in your presence. I'm just so grateful that we crossed paths a couple years ago at Seventh Chakra Institute at a beautiful meditation retreat. And just being in your presence, I felt your energy and just this
Hmm.
immediate connection. Our work is very similar. And just, yeah, I'm happy to be here and happy to have this conversation with you. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. These are some quote unquote, heavy themes, and it really, in the big scope of life, it shouldn't be.
Yeah,
Um, Life is a journey and it's a process.
yeah.
We recently had and we're in our level 2 Kundalini Yoga life cycles and lifestyles training. And I mean, prior to it, I definitely had my own journey with grief and my concept of death being an end certainly changed, and that helped me
Mm,
in the grieving process. But, you know, um, in the scope of this discussion, I want to get not only to the root of what grief is and feels like, but how that shame shows up and hinders, like it intercedes in that healing, and how our belief about death um, can evolve in a beautiful way, a beautiful healing way, beginnings and endings, and the big picture of life. And so let's start with your childhood. I want to start there because I believe reflecting on kind of our first concepts of home
yeah,
relates very much to this work.
yeah,
Um, when we have that sense of a spiritual home in us, right, our experience with grief can be very different.
yeah,
And so I want to know, like, what were your initial experiences and thus concept of home? What comes up when you
yeah,
hear that word, or what came up then and what comes up now?
yeah. Beautiful, beautiful question. So I think when I think of the word home, Nadia, today I think of that word as being surrounded by my loved ones, around my family. But home also to me is to be in complete solitude with authentic Monica. Who is Monica at her core
Mm,
essence, right? And then, as you asked me, going back to my childhood, we know that home changes. The word home changes as we evolve and get older
right,
and we live as humans, right? But as a child, home means safety, it means security. Um, for me, it was feeling safe with my mom and dad and my brother in this beautiful space that they created. And then as you get older, home is what do you create for yourself as an adult,
right.
right?
Hmm.
And then as you get more into, life, then it's like all these labels just start coming off of you, right? Yes, I'm a pharmacist. Yes, I'm an author. Yes, I'm a medical writer. Yes, I'm a mom. I was a wife. But once all those labels come off and you go inward, that is home. That's when you find yourself.
Yes. Yes. And the journey of my memoir is that's it in a nutshell,
Yeah.
right? Um, we're aware, right, of that process as children when we're in our element. Um, all of those feelings, those desires, like you said, of safety, calm, that's what home represents to us.
Yeah.
And then as our identity or our ego, many people listening may not, that's basically the spiritual concept of ego is the identity, the sense of purpose that we have in this world. It's not ego as in uh, we're big and we think we're above everybody. Ego is viewed really as that sense of identity, right? And like you said, those titles, those responsibilities, they change. They change our concept of home, and home becomes almost like a refuge, right? From them,
Yeah.
right?
And I have to share with you that, last year I went to my very first Vipassana retreat at
Uh-huh.
the chakra. And that was basically 4 days of sitting in solitude with myself. And it was
Wow.
probably one of the most powerful experiences of my life where I really got to feel like I was home.
I
The
love
labels
it.
came off. The labels came off. And
So describe, did you have then an experience of feeling separated from that in your early adulthood, even feeling separated from the concept that there is a place, a physical place, and
yeah,
then what was that experience like for you, within? And when did you begin to feel that in your heart, let alone around you physically? Because it's so important
yeah.
on that journey to get there. And what happened in the middle, Monica?
So to basically backtrack, when we are looking for a sense of home, we are looking for a sense of belonging. And we'll get into this when I was going through my earlier stages of grief after losing my husband. I didn't know where I belonged. Where do I belong in this society? And we'll get more into that. But when I went on my spiritual, beautiful Vipassana meditation, sitting with yourself in stillness and in silence for 4 days is probably one of the hardest things you could ever do, but one of the most liberating things you can ever do for your soul. And it is through that I came to realize that it doesn't matter what society thinks. All that matters is what I think and what I believe is my truth. And what
Yes.
I'm longing for is my own truth. But we live in a society where we need validation from others, acceptance from others. Um, and that's what I was able to detach from.
So can you remember then the time in your life way prior to marriage, prior, to maybe becoming a doctor, to that time when uh, at home was everything outside you. It was your homeland or your parents' home, and then the place that you created. Um, did you have that sense in your heart then? And what were kind of the initial feelings? You're saying it was the titles and the accolades and the achievements that were up there that you were achieving. Um, and then that was the focus. Was there a sense of a home then within your heart, that awareness? My point is that as we go throughout young adulthood and life, we are that identity builds and builds, and that hole or that longing in our heart, like you said, we begin to fill it. We think it will fill that hole,
Yeah.
yet that calling is always there. And what did that feel like? Was it an urge, a sense to achieve, Um,
Yeah. So, coming from a spiritual background, I am South Asian background. I'm Hindu, so Hinduism is my religion.
okay.
So, growing up, I was introduced to the beautiful spiritual work of Hinduism, but I always felt a sense of I'm missing something. Like I'm missing that spiritual connection, spiritual wisdom. So I felt like for most of my life, it was like, getting to that pharmacist status, checking off
Mm,
all the labels, right? Getting married, having children, getting that career. Um, but my spiritual connection was missing, like that just feeling like what is more to my life besides just doing, this checkbook, check off this, check off that, check off that. And I have to tell you, it is not until I stepped into my grief, like after the loss of my
okay.
husband, is when something switched in me thinking like, what am I here for? Like, what is my
Okay.
purpose on earth?
You hit it on a nail. It's like these false core beliefs we have in us that our worth, our purpose is from the outside, and that's what separates us from that initial like core innocence as
Yeah,
children, that when we're just in our element, and that really is what the point you got to with what is really my purpose. And so you identified a false belief that just gets ingrained in us from
yeah,
childhood by our ego, that our worth and our purpose is everything outside.
yeah,
Now, you know what, do you see how that kind of separated you, is
yeah,
my point,
it did.
that way of living.
Yes.
um so I believe that tapping into that longing, or that sense of something missing,
Yeah,
really is the key
yeah,
to fulfillment. And the ways that we avoid it's scary to us, and we keep, adding things outside of our life. um I think tapping into that longing is really the way to connect to our soul, that it's our soul speaking.
yeah,
So what do you think was the source of that something is missing?
yeah. I think for me, it was a sense of belonging. Where do I belong? I'm this
Okay.
little speck in this entire universe. Where do I belong? And here I am, a new widow, just lost my husband, feeling the word ashamed. The shame factor took over. It took over
Okay.
my body mentally, physically, emotionally.
And was it related to then all these titles, all these things you had built around you, right, that were supposed to fill that hole,
Yeah.
and separated you from the love within you? And so how did you experience shame? Was it a feeling of defectiveness? Was it, how did it like feel at your core, so other people can
Yeah, for
connect
me,
with this
it like
experience?
anxiety would take over my body. Like I would
How did
feel
that feel?
um nauseous, just, feeling like a pit in my stomach, um a throat burning sensation. Like it literally would take
In your
over
heart,
in my heart.
how did
Uh
it feel? Like,
it felt just like someone just punched it. It felt
mhm,
like it was empty,
okay.
and it all came from the source of me feeling ashamed of my mental health struggles that I was going through and my grief struggles that I was going through. Um, and like you had mentioned earlier, it was something where I felt ashamed talking about it until one day I realized sitting in stillness that I just don't want to be like this anymore. I
So
need to,
so let's dwell on that
yeah,
powerful manifestation of thoughts in our mind
Yeah.
that are not us, and we're not those, we weren't the body or the thoughts, to just, exemplify the power of how our mind and the thoughts separate us. So did you have fears, and did you have, judgments? You weren't meeting the roles anymore. You were afraid of losing, your place in the community, or like, what were the emotions? That's what I mean.
Yeah. So I did a
Um,
lot of negative self-evaluation on
Okay.
myself. I thought that I wasn't good enough. I thought that I wasn't living up to standards. I thought that I just
Okay.
wasn't worthy because of my marital status. Um,
Okay.
I come from a background where there is stigma and shame when someone is suffering with mental health. It's not something that you normally talk about. So I had to kind of navigate my way through the cultural part and the challenging
Oh,
part of being a South Asian woman.
oh,
And a pharmacist, right? I do this for a living. I help patients with mental health, physical health, but I had that like ego. I had to break down my ego as a pharmacist, as a doctor, saying, it's okay, Monica, if you need help, you need to get it in with
isn't that interesting to be in that position? It's tough,
it is
right?
tough.
So
Here,
why can't the helpers and the people that are helping others also struggle, right? Especially as a woman, as a minority woman. It's like we work so hard, and it's like you made it,
yeah.
and God forbid you have a struggle or a need, right?
Well, I have to tell you, I mean, COVID is a prime example of seeing doctors struggling,
Okay.
doctors needing help with medications for mental health, whatever needs therapy. I mean, you name it, And I think for me, things took a huge change when I was asked by a podcast host in 2018, Nadia, to share my story. It was my
Okay.
very first time ever publicly speaking about
How
me.
did you even get to that
It
point?
was like literally, I was at a neighbor's house, and this was the sister of that neighbor, and she knew my story. I hadn't seen her in 5 years, and she's like, "You need to come on my podcast."
So, but how did she know? Like, how did you get out of? So, you started sharing then with close female friends. Is that it?
Well, her sister was a friend of mine,
Okay.
and her sister, knew my story and shared my story with this woman named Alice. Alice was the host of the podcast called Smashing the Stigma. Alice
Okay.
phoned me and she said, "You need to come on as a guest." And I said, "I don't know the first thing about publicly speaking. I've never done this before. I'm afraid I'm going to do the entire episode in tears," which I did. I
Mhm.
was raw, vulnerable. And that moment, something sparked in me, Nadia. I was like,
Like, yeah.
holy cow, all the
Uh-huh.
shame was melting
Uh-huh.
off. The shame came off.
Uh-huh.
I'm
You're like,
and
this is this is the reality, and this is the truth of my authentic self. I
yeah,
am in pain,
I'm in pain.
right?
I am raw,
And
vulnerable, and I am not ashamed to tell you of my mental
okay,
struggles, my grief struggles, my vulnerability. Now I share that my vulnerability at that time was my superpower.
right.
Yeah.
So that experience that happened, as you were sharing the grief and the pain. And I mean, human connection requires us to be vulnerable. And
Yeah.
I've read somewhere, I can't remember, Dr. Marissa Franco. I mean, what we feel vulnerable about is what we have learned to or have shame about within ourselves. And so that magical freeing moment when you dove into vulnerability and shared, uh, you just felt like that darkness, that control of the ego was lifted.
Oh, it was
It was
like,
like I
yeah, like some sunshine, and this is where the title of my book comes in. I was starting
okay.
to find
Oh,
pockets of sunshine. And it is through our mutual friend Simi and Dipti, I was introduced to the works of Dr. Shafali also in 2018.
adore her.
And that was like a ripple effect. And the next thing you know, Priya Jain comes into my life. You and I share the same spiritual guru, teacher, wisdom teacher. And
A
I've,
regular guest on this show.
I've been working with her since 2020. Here we are 4 years later. And it's like, you think you're healed, and it's like an onion layer. And you're like, oh my God, there's still more grief there. Okay, let's keep attacking it
Mhm.
and attacking it. And that's this incredible amount of inner work that we all do, right? And and today I'm just like, I'm the first one to talk about get therapy, get whatever help you need. I still, have my sessions with Priya. I still have a regular therapist because when we talk about grief, it's a continuous, lifelong journey, lifelong healing. You never get over it. You just learn to hold hands with it in life.
Yeah, so tell us the the story of what happened when your grief,
Yeah.
why the grief began. It's very it's tragic. And when you started experiencing and what it felt like, that interplay between the grief and the shame,
Yeah.
your process of grieving and that in and out, and then you said you had these pockets of sunshine, you had this experience. What was the experience, and how did the pockets of sunshine come in?
Yeah.
What was We
So
jumped over that.
to begin, in 2011, I lost my husband to brain cancer, and we had been married for 7 years, and now I was left alone to raise two babies. Our children were only 3 and 5 at that time. I had also quit my job to be a full-time caretaker to him, so now I found myself without a job, without a husband, and two babies to raise. And I think you can say that I hit rock bottom. And I had high functioning depression for 7 years. I had to go back to work. So you and I both know that high functioning depression, you look all put together from the outside, right? But we are crumbling and looking for a way to just survive inside. It's you're numb. And I want to say the first 6 years was just that, Nadia. It was just day to day survival, getting things situated for the kids, raising them, being there for them in the best way I could, and then also helping them with their grief, right? So we've got,
So in that process, the ego, the survivalist, that reptilian part of us, it serves us well
yeah,
in that way, right?
yeah, it does.
Yet it's ultra robotic, right?
I felt like a robot.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where I would try to function to the best capability of myself that day as a mom. And then at night,
Mhm.
I would just crumble. And I've talked about this, and you talk a lot about addiction as well. My addiction was food. I found
Mhm.
comfort in food. Um, I would, make unhealthy choices when it came to eating.
So
And
to both quell the pain as well as um, you didn't know what to do with all
I didn't know
those
what to
feelings.
do.
You didn't have a place within you, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yet.
I had a therapist. I had a grief counselor. I had maybe, a handful of friends, but you can have a handful of friends, but no one, unless they're in your shoes and they've walked through the same grief, it's hard to really just feel like someone is there for you,
Mhm.
And I think it
Yeah,
was hard.
you feel separate.
You
That's
do feel
those
separate. You feel alone.
feel it's those thoughts that separate us.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have any friends who were going through what I went through. I mean, I
Mhm.
had some incredible friends who were there for me, held my hand during my dark days, but they didn't really understand the level of grief and the level of mental health struggles I was facing.
This is a perfect example of why it's so important to have that sense of a home
Yeah,
within our own hearts. Why often, even with all of that around us, we feel we don't feel at home in our home and with the love and support around us.
yeah,
Our mind, with those thoughts, it will separate us, right? But
absolutely.
you were not those thoughts.
No, no. And I have to tell you that it is through the work of this beautiful spiritual path is what I was seeking. It
Mhm.
what is what I needed to come home to myself, to find authentic Monica again. Besides the labels of her marital status and so forth, who is she? And then you also took this incredible course called Japji Sahib
Mhm.
that changed it all for me. It
Right.
helped me understand what life is.
It was actually like the transition in my life was around the same time in your life because you started talking about stuff publicly. You said it 2018, and then Japji Sahib was like 2019.
Yeah,
So if we look at 5 years ago, um, the beauty is you've found this inspiration, this motivation, this energy by being your authentic self
yeah,
in that speaking moment, right? And that was the ek or the creator, everything and nothing. Like, this is your light, Monica,
yeah,
right? This
yeah,
is your gift. This is your dharma,
yeah,
your destiny.
yeah,
And that is what you followed, right? And then that led to this exposure to these other beautiful synchronicities, right? With the other learnings from seventh chakra, and it and slowly then tell us that process of creating a home
yeah. I think it's through
after Japti. It was in that.
it was in the Japji Sahib where it was kind of like a light bulb. And it was like this spark in my heart. And it was just like, just beaming with, like, okay, I am here way beyond all these roles of mother, pharmacist, author. What is my dharma? And I have
It's
to
so
tell you,
beautiful. Japji Sahib, the first Pwade, um, it is a set of poems of phrases for those who don't know that were written by a man that had a near death experience. I had a near death experience literally 25 years ago, July of 99. And many, you don't need to have a near death experience. Many on this search with this hole in their heart, with this longing for more, which I think is the human condition. And with you and your personal experience, uh, when we hear it, when we see the words, and especially delivered through Priya Jain, like Monica's saying, it changes everything.
yeah,
And the first set of words, Ek Onkar Satanam
yeah,
Kartapurik Nirbo Nirver, I'm Saibang, and it's like Waheguru. It's like wow. It is 9 words that say from everything and nothing there's movement. Oh,
yeah,
everything was created, including your true self. without fear, without judgment, formless, timeless. This is the only truth that matters. Wow. And upon hearing that, did that give you a completely different understanding then
Yeah,
of death and thus life and your purpose and the loss?
it did. It gave me this a beautiful just explanation, and I had to come to acceptance of it as my with myself that she describes this thing called the mandala, right? Mandala, if we talk about it, for those of you guys who don't, haven't done the spiritual path, is if you just imagine like a circle, and in that circle, you've got vibrant colors and you've got dark colors, light colors, and these are basically the colors of your life. And
Mm-hmm.
the vibrant colors are basically the richness of your life. And those are basically all these life experiences that you've had here on earth.
Mm.
So, with the loss of my husband, I came to realize that that was just an experience that Monica had to have, her soul had to have on earth.
Yes.
And it is not until I took Japji Sahib course did I stop saying the word why. Why me?
That's
Which
beautiful.
switched to, this is why me.
It's your soul's experience,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I completely relate.
yeah.
Did you also know then that your soul and your husband's soul, then the beauty of them being brought together to then create the hosts for the two souls that you made together, and then feel that his soul was then still with you?
I
Did that
feel
change your concept of death completely?
I feel that he came into my life for a reason. It was a short amount of time, but he gifted me my two forever soulmates, which are my daughters. They are my biggest source of inspiration, and my youngest daughter looks just like him. So
So how
every
do you walk through then the grief today? How do you
I've been able to separate it now. I've been able to detach from Monica's story. Like I've completely able to, because of the spiritual work,
my
I am able to detach from the emotions of grief. And if I, like, I'm sharing the story with you right now, I've been able to get to a place where I'm telling you a story of a woman named Monica, who is me, but I have detached myself because I know that there's a bigger play in all of this. And that bigger play is to be of seva, to be of service, to help people who are going through mental health and grief. That is
Yet
why,
we need to process the feelings at the same time.
yes,
So how do you balance those? Did you feel you have let all the tears out and the emotions? You know what I mean? If we avoid the emotions, they will build up.
yeah,
So did you flush that out, and then now when they come up, maybe in you or your children,
I,
you feel that that work is done,
no,
or is
it's
the emotion an opportunity to get closer to your soul? How do you walk through those?
so in the earlier days, the emotions were very raw and vulnerable and very, very dark, right? Just there were so many emotions, Nadia. There was some anger, there was a lot of anxiety, there was fear, just a lot of dark emotions. And I sat with them. I
Okay,
wrote them out, I channeled through them. Um, but I didn't realize that a lot of them were still stored in me. And and I started
right.
kind of like throwing up a lot when I started working with Priya because
Hmm.
the emotions were so embedded in me that they were coming out in the form of literally vomit when I would have a session with her. And then 30 minutes later, I would actually have to
Wow.
vomit. And that made
Wow.
me realize that I didn't channel all my emotions because we're taught to not cry in public. We're taught to put on this, I'm okay persona when you're not okay. We're taught to tell people that you're okay when you are definitely not okay. And I went through that. I went through that in the
Okay.
earlier days.
Okay. I wanted to get to that as to not brush over the emotional, the weight that we carry when going through grief. When you say today that you're able to separate yourself, you have looked that Monica in the eye and you've held her,
Yeah.
the little girl as well as the grown woman, right? You've held her in a safe place and allowed all those feelings to come out, enough so that you're not quieting her, right? If she
Yeah.
shows up,
Yeah.
so
I
you can.
I can come I have a picture of a Monica who's 35 years old in a red sari. It is the last picture I had taken
Mm,
with my husband. And in that picture, it scared Monica. It's, I don't know what's going to happen to me, Monica.
mm.
And she's so scared. She feels so alone, just, lost. And I look at her and I give her a hug and I tell her that she's worthy, she matters, she shouldn't be ashamed of what she's gone through. Because if it wasn't for her courage and strength then, I would not be doing the work that I'm doing today. So I celebrate her and all the stages she's gone through.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Okay, tell us what your focus and goals are with your advocacy work and your new book.
So I continue to do a lot of work with mental health and grief because I felt like we all need a voice. We all need a voice of normalizing mental health and grief, something that every single human at some point in their life will face. And we know that grief comes in many faces, right? In addition to losing loved ones, it could be another type of grief. It could be the loss of a job, a loss of a home. There's so many different things.
Divorce or yeah.
Divorce, right? So being able to normalize talking about that. And so it came to me in a meditation that I should do a children's book. And what better way to educate on mental health and grief than starting from, a child's perspective, from, younger ages, and being able to normalize talking about such difficult topics by the time you're a teenager, right? You and I both have teen children. It is the time and
Not
age.
yet. My
You're
my oldest is
oh,
21. The younger ones are 8. I
yeah.
can't.
You had a teenager
But
at one.
yes. And what a better beautiful mission to reach them.
And I came up with the title Finding Pockets of Sunshine because when I went on antidepressants, at one point in my life, I was ashamed. I put shame on myself for seeking medication. But in 2018, when I did my talk, I had said the words that as a result of being on medication, I was starting to find pockets of sunshine. And here we are 6 years later. Who would have ever known, Nadia, that that phrase would become the title of my children's book?
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I want to buy a dozen and give
Oh,
them out to, and I will. When I say something, I do it. Give them out to any parents and children that are going through a grieving process or that may really um, Sir, I'm going to do that. I'm going to support you and your
Thank
book,
you.
and I'm going to give out copies. So please contact me if this episode is really touching your heart and what you may be going through. Pockets of sunshine. So it was holes were put into the dark veil, and there were pockets of sunshine, of pieces of hope
Yeah.
to seek the light.
Yeah.
That's
I
what started it.
now see that there was always a light shining on me, even on those darkest days. The nights where I was on the bathroom floor crying, the nights when I felt so alone. Now I know that there was something way beyond my comprehension, a spirit that was with me, that was holding my hand.
And is that where you go when we still, as being in a human body with a mind, get those inklings that no one gets it, no one really quite understands your pain? That I'm hearing from you really describes your home, that listening to that voice, right?
Yeah,
Going there within yourself, that's a home within you.
it was an absolute home within me. And it was something that I also wanted to teach my children that, you know, being your authentic self is your home. That is you coming home. Because at the end of the day, we're born into this world just feeling whole. And we leave this world feeling whole. But life is messy. Life and living in this matrix is messy, right? I mean, things happen to us, life happens. But sitting in stillness and listening to that voice within and that spirit within is making you realize that you are all you really need.
We are all infinite beings, whole, divine, and complete,
Yes.
connected, past, present, future, unchanged
Yeah,
by anything that has happened in this life.
absolutely. It is literally an experience that your soul has come to have while you are on earth for a limited amount of time. That is it.
And I so look forward to a day, to a time, to a breath when the universe is saying so, when all of our souls are connected, and I get to be with my father and meet your husband, and all of us will be together, past, present, future combined in one. The work you're doing is so beautiful. Is there anything else that you'd like to say or share with the audience?
Um, Thank you for having me. And thank you, Nadia, for the work that you do on banning shame and helping people realize that home is always within us. And I'm just truly blessed to be in this beautiful community with you. And I look forward to spending more time with you. And thank you for having me.
Ditto.
I would love to come back again when the book is released in November.
Absolutely. You got it. And then I think we need to, I'm in the process of writing a children's book, so maybe we could collaborate
I would love it.
on
I
something.
would love it.
And get your free band shame tip sheet through the website, and also check out the biweekly Kundalini yoga to build and nurture a home within you, free for parents in trauma and addiction recovery. Love you.
Thank
Bye.
you so much. Love you.
You are not alone. If you are dealing with shame and trauma, please reach out to me through my website, nadia-davis.com. You can get a free Band Shame tip sheet and find out about upcoming events. I'd love it if you picked up my book, Home is Within You, wherever books are sold. If you like this podcast, please tell a friend, leave a review, and make sure to follow me on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Sending warm hugs.